Thanks for having me, guys. Actually, Giselle, I think you contacted me, was it late last year or the beginning of this year?
It was a while ago, yes.
It was a while ago. And I love art. I love art. I love architecture. And so I thought, well, you know, I'm a business guy, right? I teach business. I teach the Graduate School of Business. I teach MBA students. But I happen to teach entrepreneurship, and that's my background. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I thought, yeah, this would be a good opportunity to come and actually see some creative types, creative people, creative artists, and give you a little bit of a perspective of how I see, I suppose, if you will, business and entrepreneurship as it intertwines with creativity and creative artists. So that's really what we're going to talk about in a pretty short period of time. So a little bit about my journey. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not from Australia. I was born and raised in the United States. My background is in IT. So I worked in the technology sector for many, many, many years, corporate America. But I happen to be in that industry at the height of the dot-com era in the 1990s, showing my age a little bit. And I jumped ship, got out of the mothership, if you will, of corporate America, did a couple of startups on my own. Come the year 2000, everything crashed, including my company. So what do you do when you're out of a job? You're completely and utterly burnt out and fed up. You move to Australia. And you come here and you study for a PhD. And that's exactly what I did. To Perth. I fell in love with this country. I'm a citizen now. And you know, they say the grass is always greener on the other side. I can tell you, coming from the States, the grass is greener in Australia. Trust me on that. It's a fabulous place to live. Great to be here. So that's a little bit about my background. So I've got quite a bit of experience with actually entrepreneurship and creating companies. Again, the context is this will be very much a business kind of orientated talk. Okay? So why do we need to think about entrepreneurship? Why do you need to think about entrepreneurship as creative artists? Well, I think there are many reasons for it. This is from an article from the West Australian. It was back in January. Again, from a business perspective. Just look at some of these quotes. This is from the article. There's a lot of talk about China. We know that China is slowing down. We know that their share market has crashed. And what is that doing? Well, that's affecting our economies. Japan, well, they've had trouble economically since the 1990s. The era of easy money's over. If you're not exporting, opportunities appear to be weak. We know that in the resources sector, the construction phase is over. Now it's more about the production phase. So what has happened? You're seeing tons of layoffs. People getting sacked left and right. And that's not good, especially if you live in WA. Deficits. The last quote is what I actually like the most, is we need small businesses to start up and grow. We need entrepreneurs like yourselves. If you will, to take the place, or to hopefully partially take the place of the slowdown that's happened with respect to the resources sector. So let's just take a look at this really quickly. This will be hard to pick up, but the top line, or the top bar, represents the mining industry. That's WA's gross state product at the peak of the mining boom, right? 70% of our economic output came from the mining industry. Now guess what? When that industry has a hiccup, we all suffer. And that's happening right now. Guess what's on the bottom? It's hard to read, but guess what's on the bottom bar? Let's change that. Let's move that bar up. And I'm going to give you some ideas of how I think maybe we can achieve that in the future. Again, kind of the need for entrepreneurship. This is something that I talk to my students about a lot, particularly with Asia. Yes, there may be a few little hiccups in China, but I don't think things are going to slow down all that much in China for a long, long time. Look at the Asian middle class, massive growth, and that means they've got money to spend. And particularly money to spend on higher end products, luxury goods, if you will. I've been to China, spent a lot of time in China, and they love everything West, anything Western. They love it, and they'll pay for it. So I'm thinking, if I'm an artist, how can I combine maybe a Western theme with an Asian theme and attract customers in Asia for my art? Something to think about. So, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but again, what's the need? Well, we know if you follow anything in Australia about manufacturing, it's a sector that's struggling. The latest stats that I've seen is real wage growth is in decline. We know that the cost of living keeps going up. Guess what? That affects all of our lives. Will mining return to the glory days? Probably not, or at least not for maybe another 5, 10 years, who knows? And Australian labor costs are amongst the highest in the world. Who's going to pay for a product from Australia when it costs so damn much? The point being is, we need to think about how do we create more value add. And I think particularly as artists, that's a great sweet spot for you guys. Okay, we'll see if this works. We've had a few little technical issues. I want to look at some Australian inventions. Inventions that you might not have even known were created here in Australia. Let's see if we can get out to the internet here. Called the best time. I don't think we want to install the antivirus. Where we'll shut that down. Best Aussie inventions of all time. Came across this as I was preparing for this presentation. I think the internet's a little bit slow, and we're getting all the ads. Sorry about that. But let's have a look. Did you know that the fridge was created in Australia? Okay. Let's just scroll through a few of these so we have a look. I don't know if that's a good invention or not, but the underwater torpedo. Electric drill. Look at the dates on some of these. Powered flight. The notepad. Feature film. There you go. Ned Kelly, it looks like. Some of the life-saving surfing, the tank. Rotary clothes hoist. Okay, there we go. Pacemaker. Wow, that's pretty significant. 1928. The Ute. That's probably a good place to start. Anyway, we can go on and on. Ute's a classic. Point being is, there are a lot of Australian inventions that have been created here in this country. What do you think those inventions have in common, besides maybe being created by an Australian? Anything in common that you see running through those inventions?
Solving a problem.
Solving a problem. Okay. Anybody else?
They're pretty industrial.
Industrial, maybe that reflects the era for a lot of those. We've certainly transitioned into more of a service economy from a manufacturing economy. Other thoughts? Okay, then what's the purpose of business? Something that I ask my students every time I teach entrepreneurship. What's the purpose of business?
To provide a service. To provide a service.
Provide a service? Okay. Other ideas?
Make cash.
Make cash. Yeah, probably the number one response is to make money. And ultimately, yes, hopefully you can make money. But I like the comment that you made earlier, solving a problem. And so what I want to talk about now, we're actually moving through this pretty quickly, but the way that I see the nature of entrepreneurship, and look, since the global financial crisis, I think capitalism, the market economy has taken a little bit of a hit. So what I try to encourage my students to think about is there more to business than just making money? And so to your point, my personal view is entrepreneurs actually solve human problems or human needs. That's the purpose of the entrepreneur. Come up with ideas, new, creative, innovative ideas that solve human needs and human problems. Okay? Let me just click on this link very quickly. Anybody know what that is? Mona. So why did David Walsh create Mona? What human problem or human need was he solving?
Not enough eyes as made.
Okay, absolutely. I don't know, maybe there was some personal interest there, but how many of you have been to Mona? I've been to Tassie, but I haven't been to Mona. What's it like?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a pretty, I hear it's very, very interesting. Some people like it, some people hate it. The point being is, again, this is a guy that obviously loves arts. What human need or problem is he solving?
He really wanted to be a Bond villain.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. So what about creative artists? What kind of human needs and human problems, if you will, are you guys solving?
Indeed, the stimulation, I suppose.
Stimulation. What else?
The need to expand your own experience.
Expanding your own experience. Maybe more of an individual need. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking emotions, aesthetics, an experience. As I was thinking about this, what do creative artists actually do? What kind of need are you solving? And maybe that's a little bit more intangible. It's not like eating some food because you're hungry. But think about that in terms of your particular sphere or genre. What need are you solving? Maybe you've got some of your own personal needs, but in terms of customers who might be buying your art, what problem are you solving? What need are you solving? I would challenge you to think about that. The other thing that I thought about as I was preparing this presentation is what are some of the key challenges that maybe creative individuals, creative artists are actually facing? Not just currently, but what about in the future? If you want to be successful, make a living, what are some of the challenges that you might be facing as an artist, as a creative person? No doubt you're all creative. Again, kind of back to this idea, you're all creative. Think about how you're solving that human need, creating something that's tangible, if you will. And in this slide, I don't want to be derogatory, but again, as I was thinking about this, well, are you just another painter, another photographer, another actor? The reality is, when we look at it, I suppose, in the context of business and the economy and the global stage, there are thousands of other artists out there doing maybe the same things. How do you compete with them? Maybe not compete is the right word, but how do you actually, again, make a living? How do you win or gain their trust and their wallet share or their money? Why don't you do that by differentiating? In fact, Giselle, I was looking at your website earlier and I'm thinking that you're pretty different. You're very different and very unique. And I think if I was an artist trying to make a living, that's exactly the approach that I would take. How do I differentiate myself from the rest of the crowd as an artist? So I think, again, to make a living at this, those are the things that you really need to consider and probably think about. Again, this is really more business speak, but when we think about who's the target market, well, maybe start thinking about who I'm actually selling to. Who do I want to sell to? Maybe that could be based on geography or demographic segments or psychographic segments, for example. Maybe thinking around how do I actually think about my customer set and who I want to sell to. I'm not going to talk about this a lot, but again, this is just a representation of when we think about beginning to segment, if you will, the market by the customer need or what the customer wants to buy. There's many ways that we can do that. And it might be beneficial for you to actually go through that exercise. This is a slide that I actually use when I teach a segmental strategy in market segmentation. And it's for the company Seiko watches out of Japan. So when you think about watches, right? This is the way that I see watches. We can begin to segment those out. Is a watch a tool? Is it a connoisseur item? Is it a fashion statement? Is it jewelry? What is it? And we kind of plot out, well, where does Seiko fit? Now, you can tell this is slightly old because Apple is not on the chart yet. But now they've got the watch, right? Where does their watch fit? Probably somewhere between design and technical, right? Maybe jewelry. But again, the point is, think about who you're looking to sell to. And how do I think about maybe segmenting that market a little more finely to create opportunity? The value proposition. Don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but again, as an entrepreneur, you need to think about this. And maybe as simple as just writing down something. Again, the value proposition is very much focused on the art, the product, the service. How do you improve the customer situation so it's relevant? This, to me, is more difficult as an artist, I would think. What are the specific benefits that you're actually providing and offering to a customer? Again, as I think as artists, that's pretty intangible. I'm not sure you can quantify that, but it would be interesting to have a think about that and figure out, can I quantify that value? And then ultimately you're telling the customer, or the potential customer, like Giselle has done, it's very unique and different. How am I different? How am I unique? Why should you buy from me from the other 1,000 artists that are doing the same thing? The other 1,000 or 10,000 photographers out there. Okay. The other thing, too, that I thought about in terms of some of the challenges is we can work as individual artists, or whatever our genre is. We can do that individually, right? But my suspicion is you better be damn good to survive if you want to work as an individual. But when I think about Perth, we're pretty isolated. And the other view I thought was more of a broader view is, how do we create, or how do you create, as a group of creative people, more complementary, maybe a hub here in Perth? What should Perth be known for? What should put Perth on the map in terms of some kind of a genre, an artistic genre? When people think of X, Y, or Z, they think of, that place in Western Australia, Perth. Those guys are doing the most creative, innovative pieces of art in the world. Why not? What that entails, though, is maybe a little bit more collaboration of a vision of what could be together, rather than trying to work individually. This is actually a little self-serving, to be honest, because I'm going to talk a little bit about my interest as an artist. And if anybody in this room has a similar interest, who has more of an interest, please talk to me later. So let me just show you this clip. Hopefully this will come up. Before I play this, when we think about jugglers, artists who juggle for a living, what do you typically think of? What do they normally juggle? Balls, bowling balls, chainsaws, what do you call them? The flame sticks. This is actually, it's a YouTube clip, but it's from a program that I saw in the United States back in 1985. It's going back many, many, many years. The artist is a bloke by the name of Michael Motion, who's probably one of the more celebrated artists in the United States. He's done a ton of choreography for Cirque du Soleil. Fabulous, fascinating guy. And let me just play this. Hopefully this will come up. We'll probably get a few ads here and there. And I can tell you how this kind of inspired me. I'm not sure if we have any audio, but that's okay. No doubt we'll get an ad. Sorry about that. Internet might be running a little slow. I'm not sure if we can pull this off. Now there we go. No, it's just a little bit of a music overlay. That's all. So those are glass balls. What's interesting is if you play the whole clip, he actually works his way down to one ball, and then it gets interesting. Okay, I actually met this guy, talked to him, said it took him literally years to get that manual dexterity to be able to do that. And we talk about sacrifice for your art. Just a phenomenal artist. And you should see him, he gets in a triangle with rubber balls, starts bouncing the balls in a triangle. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. Michael Motion, look him up on the web. But when I saw that, this is going back a few years when I saw that, I love glass art. That's my thing. I love glass art. So Dale Chihuly out of Washington State in the United States, the Venetian artists, anything glass art, I love glass art. So when I saw that, I just thought, wow, these glass balls, and I love the pyramid shape as well. But how can I actually take these glass balls and start to produce art out of these glass balls in a pyramid? With fiber optics running through them, all kinds of colors, and I've designed chandeliers, and that really inspired me. And then in the 1990s, I thought, well, what I'd like to do is, because I can come up with the designs, but I'm not an artist, I can't create it. So maybe I can get a group of artists who might have an interest to do that for me. So I came up with this concept called spherical art. And at the time, this was prior to my company going bust, I was thinking about how can I create a community of artists who work in the spherical genre. I never got it off the ground, okay? But if there's anybody here who's interested in, coming up with some art in the spherical, what I call the spherical genre or spherical design, please come and see me because I'd love to do something. Seriously, and I'll pay you. Okay, but the point is, think about the complementary. How do I get maybe a genre that can put Perth on the map? Maybe that already exists. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, think about that. Amongst a community of artists, how can you create a genre that is world-class and renowned? As an entrepreneur, go for it. Okay, number one challenge is I say, well, tell me, what are your challenges? What challenges do you guys face? Isolation? Yeah, how do people know?
Not enough.
How do people know about Perth? Sorry?
I said not enough money.
Not enough money?
Not enough time.
Not enough time? Always a problem. Sorry? Slow internet? Yeah, I experienced that today. Not tonight. Later I was trying to download something and I live in the hills and it's shocking how much I pay Telstra. My view is, and we're getting very close to the end here, my view is what I call business model. And we talk a lot more about this when I teach this subject, and particularly distribution. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but again, I'm trying to put my artist hat on and thinking, well, ultimately, how do I make money? And what does that look like in the future? Does it change from maybe the way it is today? Very, very quickly. What I mean by revenue models is, I'm guessing most of you are probably what I would call a volume or unit-based. So a customer, a client is paying you a fixed amount for your art or whatever the genre might be. That's it. It's a transaction. But think about, well, are there other ways that I can actually think about revenue? Can I have a subscription service where I have many people subscribing to me as an artist and I produce pieces of work for them on an annual basis or on a quarterly basis? I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head. But again, thinking about how we actually generate revenue, and then of course the sales model is online. Well, if we've got a slow internet, that's problematic. Where do I sell? Where do I sell my creations? Where do I sell my art? Direct, through the store, retail shop, retail front, online. The value-added reseller and systems integrator, maybe that's something to think about as an artist. Maybe I create something and then I pass it on to my mate and he does something and we just add value to it along the way. And then we sell it. Don't know. Something to think about. the reason that I talk about distribution is how do I actually distribute, or what do I distribute my art on? And let me just give you a couple of examples that I came up with. One is, this is a friend of mine, actually lives just right down the road from me in the hills. He's South African. His wife's father produces these back in Durban, South Africa. That's actually a picture, but it's printed on a sheet of aluminum. And that aluminum can hang outside. It never rusts, inside, outside, but it's a medium to display art. It's not a picture, it's not in a frame, it's not hanging on the wall. It's on a sheet of aluminum that can be hung anywhere, inside, outside. Again, what's the distribution mechanism? If you're an artist, or if you're a photographer or painter. Next one is, this has been a little more hard to pick up, but basically what happens in the future when, you've probably seen this, but when I'm let's say in a dining room or a living space, and I actually don't have my walls painted, there's like a liquid crystal plasma, and I can just project up whatever I want. Again, if I'm a painter, if I'm a photographer, what's the medium? What's the distribution medium in the future? And how do I make a living out of maybe selling to, I don't know, who you sell it to the house? To the manufacturer of the liquid plasma? It's coming. And of course, if I'm a musician, right? And this is one thing that I'm not clear on myself, but if you're a musician, Apple's now, well, I wouldn't say they're moving away from iTunes, but now they've got a streaming service. Well, they will have very, very soon. So again, if I'm a musician, can you even produce a CD anymore? Does anybody care? You're selling your music at, what, $1 or $2 a pop? And if you go onto iTunes, you go onto Apple Music, the streaming service, cranking out music, but how do I sell it? What's the medium? What's the distribution medium? How do I make a living out of $1 pieces of music? I don't know. It's becoming completely and utterly digital. I'm actually an old school. I like vinyl records. That's my preference. Well, CD baby, same thing. It's a place for artists to go and sell their music, but you're selling it at a time, most of the time, for $1, a couple of bucks. I don't know. If I'm a musician, that's pretty scary. Unless I'm world class, I'm AC/DC or somebody like that. If I'm a new artist starting out, how do I make a living out of this other than playing gigs and getting hopefully paid a reasonable amount of money for doing gigs? And lastly, this is just a portal. Did a little bit of research on this, and I think there are probably more and more portals that are available where you could obviously sell. Again, if you're an artist and you're producing a product or service which would allow you to sell through the portal, is how do I tap into these as a distribution medium, particularly with a global audience, where I could maybe sell more of my art. So other things, jewelry. I know there's more art work that I've seen on this website, but again, just a representation. There are probably many, many, many others. But how do I think about distribution? How do I think about where do I actually sell what I produce? And what does that look like in the future? Particularly if you're so isolated here in Perth. Okay, so those are probably, well, that's one of the big challenges that I see for the creative industries, for artists such as yourself. But what I would encourage you to think about is do something big. Do something big and bold. Maybe it's not just as an individual, but together, collectively, collaboratively. It puts Perth on the map. It bumps up that art bar that's down at the bottom of the chart a little further up, so that we see maybe more economic gain for the economy, and hopefully more satisfaction for yourselves.